Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bencavanga, and welcome to Facts Over Fear. You know, on this show, I love to interview people who are running for public office because there are so many issues that our communities are facing. And in case you forgot, because May feels like a very long time ago, I don't know about you, we had a primary just a couple of months ago, and there was a huge upset in one of these races. Longtime Allegheny County Council President Pat Catena was ousted as the Democratic nominee for the state house. Catena had served on the council since 2017 and was president since 2020. So the interesting thing, though, about this election is that this wasn't like someone didn't squeak by and beat him. He was voted out in a landslide, specifically by over 30 points. And this is according to public source. And this is somebody who had years worth of media attention due to his council leadership role. So this was a very interesting and exciting race that I thought deserved a little bit more coverage in terms of who won and what we can expect moving into the election here in the fall. Now, an article from Public Source reporter Charlie Wolfson spoke with Tom Durer. He's a Democratic political operative and former county councilman member who said Catena appeared to be relying on the fact that he was endorsed by the Allegheny County Democratic Committee, some labor unions that would work to carry to victory. But that song and dance just isn't working anymore. People want a vision of how you are going to improve their lives. So, who was able to offer this vision to their constituents? That's my guest today. Her name is Brittany Bloam. She is an attorney and first-time candidate for a Democratic nominee for PA State House 45. Brittany, thank you so much for joining me for Facts Over Fear.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I like that we accidentally coordinated. That's got to be a good sign for things to come with the interview.
Great. You look good in red.
Oh, well, thank you. You're rocking the orange. So just before we even get into all of this, can you just share State House 45? What area of the state is that?
Yeah, State House 45 is in the West Hills of Allegheny County, so between downtown Pittsburgh and the airport.
Thank you. So this was kind of one of those stories that I don't think people were really expecting this result, because your race wasn't expected necessarily to be one of the biggest to come out of the primary season, but defeating a well-known incumbent by 30 points is major. So what do you think voters were trying to say with that result?
Yeah, I think just to be clear, though, he is the incumbent for county council. This race is for the state house. So we are both seeking the Democratic nomination to represent House District 45. Our current state representative, Anita Kulik, is retiring. So this is an open seat. I think what really resonated with voters was the efforts that I made, that our campaign made, to knock on doors, talk to people, be present in the community, and really share our message of, hey, I know everything's too expensive. Like, I know people are struggling. And I think that, direct connection really resonated with a lot of people. And, I'm raising my kids in this district just like a lot of other families. I'm dealing with the cost of childcare, the cost of groceries. And I think that relatability was helpful. And I also do think that people were really looking for kind of new energy, new generation of leadership. People that, aren't career politicians getting involved and trying to make things better in our communities.
No, and I appreciate that clarity. But to really establish what was going on here, I think it was important that there was all of this name recognition, and then there you were, but you had sort of this fresh new look on things, in particular, like you said, in a way that was connecting to a demographic that perhaps hadn't been. I read that your campaign said that it knocked on over 10,000 doors, which is amazing. In an era of sort of the digital advertising and social media, why was that so important to you and your campaign to make that face-to-face connection with potential constituents?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. As a first-time candidate, I kind of thought, oh, it's all social media. It's Substack. It's, a lot of electronic.
And this is important.
No, this is absolutely a huge important piece of it. But I think what gets lost a lot when we aren't having real conversations is that, people turn on the TV, they turn on their media of choice, and they hear a lot of like anger and
Yes.
people, just kind of talking over one another. And I think that actually having conversations face to face directly helps people realize like we all kind of want the same things, right? Like we have a different way of maybe approaching how we want to get there. But
Hmm.
I think we all want things to be better for our kids. I think we all want, to know that our families are safe. We want to know that we
Hmm.
can work hard and succeed. And I think that, having those conversations and seeing people talking to them where they're at really helps drive that home as opposed to, a soundbite they see on TV or on a social media clip.
No, absolutely. And you also outraised your opponent, and to your point, and I wanted to connect the dots for people here before we move into the issues and get your thoughts on a bunch of different topics that I know matter to Pennsylvanians. But I think this is important. You had a lot of grassroots energy and a lot of, donations from the community itself. Do you think in particular the Democratic voters are looking for candidates that are tied less to sort of these traditional party structures and more about working from the ground up as a community of people?
I do think so. And I thought one of the things that was really exciting for me personally about the campaign is that a lot of people who had never really been involved in politics, like never knocked a door, never made a phone
Mm.
call, were activated and got involved because I do think that people are looking for ways to make a change, to help our communities, right? To do things a little differently than they've been done forever.
Mm.
And I think this was kind of the in that, a lot of people in the district needed or were looking for. And so I've said like it's incredibly flattering and humbling when people are willing to contribute their money and their time
Yeah.
to support, what you're trying to do.
Hmm. Why did you want to run?
Yeah, great. Why would you want to do this?
Why?
Is
Well,
kind
I
of how
mean,
people have phrased it. Why would you do this in this
you
time of
know?
political um yeah, a big part of it. So I am a mom. I have two young daughters. I think a lot of people, a lot of elder millennials, we're raising our kids and we're looking, especially at the federal government, and we're just really looking for leaders that we can point to for our kids and say, hey, this is the way that our government should run. This is how we respectfully,
Hmm.
intellectually, get things done to make our communities better, as opposed to, shutting off the TV because you're afraid of what our leaders might say next. And so for me, I was raised in small town Pennsylvania up in Elk County.
Hmm.
My parents really instilled in me the importance of looking out for your neighbor, doing what you can to make your community a better place. And when, I saw Representative Kulik was retiring, I thought that this was really an amazing opportunity to use my skills as an attorney and also my, deep feeling of public service to kind of honor what my parents taught me and also kind of show my girls like, this is how we can make a difference.
Was there any one issue in particular that said to you, this is why I'm going to run? Because I've been hearing, I interviewed, her name's Luba, and she started Vote Mama. And she was saying that a
Mm,
lot of mothers in particular run because of an issue that just pissed them off that was happening in their community. And they were like, I want to make a change for the better. Is there
uh-huh.
something that you look to that you say, that's the thing? Or is it just this overarching want to do better for the next generation?
Yeah, there's several I think connected issues, but for me becoming a parent really made it more apparent, no pun
Mhm.
intended, just like
Mhm.
how much support families need, from the time you
Yeah.
find out you're going to have a baby and suddenly you're interacting with the healthcare system in a way that, a lot of people haven't before. And just realizing, the limitation or how much everything's going to cost. And that experience, I mean, I had pretty difficult pregnancies. So the experience of, you know, knowing that at least in Pennsylvania, my reproductive rights were protected, and luckily everything turned out well for us. But
Mhm.
just thinking about what that would be like in an environment where I might not have those reproductive rights, right? So that, and then moving on to, we've relied on full time childcare since my girls were infants, and
Mm-hmm.
just seeing, how huge of a line item that is in
Mm.
so many families' budgets. And, there's a reason a lot of, especially mothers, are driven out of the workforce. Like, it's
Yep.
just not a sustainable, uh, the math doesn't math, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was an issue that really for me was like, what are we doing, right? Like, how
Mm.
have we set up our economy in a way that not only drives people out of the workforce, but we're relying on childcare workers who a lot of times are barely getting by on those wages, driving DoorDash at night, having a second job to support their own families.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to me, that's childcare is infrastructure. And if we want to continue, if we want to encourage people to work, if we want to encourage people to have families, we need to provide support for that.
I mean,
So those are
Br-
two of the issues.
no, I love that.
Yeah.
And Brittany, I wake up every day going, what are we doing? That's sort of like
Yeah.
the impetus of keeping
Right.
things like you see all of the issues and the woes that we are facing. And then you see how certain people are sort of using the fear mongering instead of getting down to the heart of an issue. And I want to pivot to that quickly before we
Sure.
talk about the things that impact you most, because it seemed like there was a pivotal moment here, at least from a talking point perspective, during this race that you were in, after a campaign mailer labeled you as being backed by an extreme left group because of support from organizations that advocate for transgender rights. And I bring this up because I interview a lot of people in the LGBTQ community, and the idea that we're using other people's sense of humanity to scare people into voting against their own self-interests is appalling to me. When that happened and those mailers went out, what was your knee-jerk reaction emotionally to that? And then how did your campaign decide to respond and why?
Yeah, that was I paused because there was actually a mailer before that was it came from an unidentified source that,
Mm,
doxed me and my family, and so we were kind of in the process of dealing with that
wow.
when yeah, it was a lot. I'm like, "Oh,
Wow.
these are why people won't run for office," right? Like, these are the types of reasons that good
Yes.
people, that decent people don't want to get involved in this process. But so, we basic human dignity is very important to me. It's fundamental. I mean, I don't know particularly what group they were targeting with that, that
Mm-hmm.
mailer. But I think that the mailer was became a distraction from kind of these day-to-day issues that we
Mm-hmm.
were really talking about and what voters are talking about at the door, right? And so our response was, yes, I believe in the dignity of all people. But we're trying to solve everything being too expensive, right? And so I don't know why that was a choice that was made at all.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that really did kind of thrust this race, I think, into the spotlight.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting to me because I think when you're seeing a platform or a space where a certain set of beliefs are not really electable beliefs, they have to then pivot to this fear mongering so that hoping people will be distracted so that when we're talking about the issues, it's almost like, well, but at least we're not doing this. And so I appreciate
Mhm.
being able to actually recenter conversation and talk about the things that you will do or will support. So I wanted to move into talking about some of the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians, to your point, and the things that you were discussing around kitchen tables and on people's front porches. And you alluded to it earlier that the healthcare crisis is real here in Pennsylvania. The federal cuts
Mhm.
have stripped people off of the Medicaid rolls and what they're called here in Pennsylvania, which is Penny. A lot of people have lost Penny. And many Pennsylvanians are even just trying to access affordable care, in particular, like you had mentioned, around reproductive and maternal care, around mental health, all of these things. What do you see as the legislature's biggest healthcare priority in the near future, let's say in the next 1 to 2 years, should you be a part of that legislature?
Yeah, I think, the cuts on the federal level have made it that much more important for the state government, for our state house, for our state senate, to be a backstop and make sure that our citizens have the healthcare funding that they need. And so I think you mentioned at the top, right? Like, the state house has a 1-seat majority at this point. The Democrats hold a 1-seat majority in the state house. And so it's really vital to maintain that majority in order to ensure that we are providing funding for healthcare for our citizens, especially when, like you said, people are losing Medicare, Medicaid funding at the federal level.
So we're also seeing here in Pennsylvania, and being from a small town, I don't know if you've heard
Mhm.
from people in those communities, but I've interviewed a lot of people from rural Pennsylvania. They're seeing a lot of hospitals closing, labor and
Mhm.
delivery units closing, because providers are warning that there are physician shortages, because so many of these local hospitals use Medicaid as the basis for keeping the doors open. And now that funding's gone, a lot of this is sort of on the chopping block. What role specifically would you play as a legislature to help ensure that these communities don't become healthcare deserts?
Yeah, that was the term I was gonna use, healthcare desert. Yeah, and I just saw an interesting is probably not the correct word, but a map of kind of how far you have to drive, if you live in Elk County, where I grew up, in order to deliver a baby with an
Mm,
OBGYN, and it's just mind-boggling.
mm.
Again, Natalie, like you said, what are we doing? Um, what are we
That
doing?
part.
So, again, it goes back to the state legislature and making sure that there is funding to support these rural hospitals.
Mhm,
My district's a little more urban, but we have
mhm,
had hospitals close here as
mhm,
well. Um, and so just really taking a hard look at, what is it that these hospitals need? I mean, obviously they're losing funding at the federal level, but like
mhm,
what can we do to support and make sure that our citizens have access.
mhm.
Because not only there's can we afford it, but also is it close enough that I can get there when I need it?
That part. Yeah.
Mhm.
Another issue that has garnered a lot of attention, and I do a lot of work around this topic, in particular, talking to people from Pennsylvania about, is that of which the AI data centers are coming
Mhm.
into fruition, and the amount of pushback that we're seeing from communities. There's this, conversation. Oh, they're bringing jobs, but it's also raising major, overshadowing concerns around water use, energy demand, local oversight. How do you, as a legislator, balance this idea of economic development while also protecting communities and our natural resources, which are not
Mhm.
infinite?
Absolutely. So I think I bring kind of an interesting, unique perspective as a land use attorney. Like my
Oh,
background is quite literally development and yeah. Um, So, like, I know how we approve projects. I know how
mhm,
the municipality's planning code, like all of that is quite literally my area of expertise. And so data centers are, kind of the current wave of development that everyone's focused on.
mhm,
I think it's really important, as someone who cares deeply about the environment, that we have state level regulations to ensure that our energy I want to ensure that our citizens' energy bills aren't going up because of
mhm,
the data centers coming into their communities. I think we need to make sure that the data centers are supplying their own power.
mhm,
We need to make sure that we are protecting our water quality, our natural resources. But I also think it's important that we allow local municipalities to make those decisions about, okay, where would it make sense or not for this
mhm,
type of development to occur. Um, we have, I think it's 2,200 roughly municipalities across the Commonwealth
mhm,
who are all empowered to have their own zoning ordinance. A lot of them do. And so allowing those communities to make those decisions for themselves with the input of their citizens. There's recently a bipartisan bill to allow municipalities to pump the brakes a little bit on data center development and allow them to get their ordinances up to date and where they
mhm,
are they ready for this if it should come.
mhm.
And I would support something like that because it allows the municipality to say, yeah, you know what, we need another few months here to figure this out because it is a complex
Yes.
issue, and I think
Yes.
we are asking a lot. I mean, we're all trying to wrap our heads around it at this point, right?
Absolutely. And I think it ties to so many other issues as well. And not only is Pennsylvania really sitting at the crux of that, but we're also very much an energy hub in other ways. We center around the debates focused on fracking, natural gas, the state's energy future. Where do you stand on the expansion of fossil fuel development versus accelerating investments in renewable energy sources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have represented solar companies. I mean, I'm very much in favor of renewable resource, while
Hmm.
also acknowledging that we can't all go like our system can't support everyone having like an electric car or something
Hmm.
right now. Like
Hmm.
we need to slowly or thoughtfully make that transition towards more renewable.
Hmm.
Um, just because the way the grid is set up, like I don't think we can just pull the plug on fossil
Hmm.
fuels at this point, without really significant consequences.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating to hear these things, Brittany, because not from you, but just in general, because it's like we've kicked these cans so far down the road. And it's like now we're at this place where you're right. I mean, we can't just like do this and,
Mhm,
flip a switch, pun intended, and change the system over.
mhm,
But acknowledging that the system should have been in this direction, trending in this direction for much longer than it
mhm.
has. I think that's where a lot of people that I talk to in these industries feel the frustration. And there's also on top of these things, we're talking data centers, we're talking energy consumption, and now I want to bring in the conversation around ICE because immigration enforcement is another space in which we're talking about what is this land going to be used for? What are our resources going to be used for? This has become one of the most divisive issues in the country. We have one of the biggest ICE detention centers in the Northeast at Moshannon, with increased ICE operations, raising questions about things like due process, transparency,
Mhm.
cooperation between the local and federal agencies. What role should Pennsylvania lawmakers play in protecting residents' rights while all of these federal actions continue? As a lawyer, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this from a legal
Well, like,
perspective.
to be clear, anything I say is not me giving legal advice. It's just right, it's my perspective, from my
Hmm.
training. Um, but so as a state legislator, I
Hmm.
would never vote to support using state funding to support ICE. I mean, I
Period.
think that the federal overreach is
Hmm.
gone too far,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And I think it makes the jobs of our local law enforcement more difficult, in a lot of ways because we've got, masked agents coming in and
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't trust law enforcement as a result. And our local police departments, I mean, they play a vital role in our public safety. And so
Hmm.
we need to be supporting them. And for a lot of citizens, it makes it really hard to do that when, ICE is around the corner.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, because I appreciate your time, I don't want to take up too much more of it. I just have a few more quick
Sure.
questions to ask. One of them's around the minimum wage because, oh
Hmm.
boy, we have tried and tried
What
and
are we
tried.
doing?
What are we doing? That's really the title of the show, you guys. It's just remained so stagnant at 7.25 an hour, which I mean, I think you and I both know that is very much a starvation wage.
Hmm.
No one can afford to live on 7.25 an hour. And we've seen neighboring states, they're all increasing this minimum wage. Do you support, first of all, raising the minimum wage? And what do you say to critics who argue that it could hurt small businesses if we don't?
Yeah, I absolutely support increasing it. And I mean, the state house Dems voted to
Hmm.
increase it, right?
Time and
And that
again.
bill is right. It again and again. I think it's been 20 years since it was
Mhm.
raised. And I hear right, that's always the response. Well, it's going to hurt small business. But I think that having more money in everyone's pocket is actually going to help our small
Mhm.
businesses and our economy. Like if we have more disposable income, people spend it, and that will support our economy.
We're also one of the few states, well, I shouldn't say few, we're one of the states that do not have a statewide paid leave program. And
Hmm.
I heard you speak to this point earlier in our conversation, being a parent yourself, and also,
Hmm.
the idea of childcare and all of these things. But parental leave is a thing that people need for, a society to
Right.
work. We've been looking at the Family Care Act. I've been following it closely now for a few years. It's made its way through the House. It's been
Mhm.
up for a vote. It hasn't quite crossed the finish line. Do you support the Family Care Act? And is this part of a necessary turning of the page in order for Pennsylvanians to compete nationally for workers?
Yeah, and you probably know this, but we're one of the only industrialized nations that does not offer paid leave, paid
Here.
family
Hmm.
leave.
Hmm.
And so I absolutely am in support of that on a statewide level. You mentioned, this act has or this bill has been introduced, bipartisan, right? There was
Hmm.
State
It's very
Representative
bipartisan.
Lindsey Powell and State Senator Devlin Robinson, who represents part of my district. I mean, I think everyone agrees that paid family leave is a it was helpful to families, and it's not just for moms, right? Like, I think a lot of times it gets framed as, "Oh, she just wants to have kids and quit work," but it also allows for people to care for aging parents, for their own health, and I think that this kinda goes back to kinda my outlook on things is that we all are, you can and we need to have supports in place for people to be able to take care of their health, take care of the health of their family. And so that's absolutely medical leave is statewide paid medical leave is something I support.
Absolutely. As we wrap this up, and thank you so much, I'd love to have you back on as we get closer to November and get your thoughts moving forward, because God only knows what issues we will be faced with in our world of what are we doing. But my final question for you, I want to bring us all the way back to the beginning of the conversation around the 10,000 doors that were knocked on during your campaign. When people invited you to talk with them in their homes or on their porches or front yards, what issue came up over and over that surprised you or perhaps convinced you that it wasn't getting enough attention in Harrisburg?
So just to update that stat, I think we're up to
Oh,
13,000.
listen, we're breaking
'Cause
news
we,
here, people, in real time.
uh, yeah, I
I
think that's
love that.
as of last week. I mean, we really have made that
That's
a huge
amazing.
priority is to talk to voters. So not surprising, affordability is top of mind for
Mhm.
so many families. People are working really hard, and it's just hard to keep up with groceries, with utilities, childcare, medical care. I mean, it all adds up, and it's not getting any cheaper.
Right.
It's not getting any less expensive. So affordability is definitely top of mind. But also, I think people are tired of the vitriol and just yelling. And we mentioned that earlier, right?
Hmm.
I think people are looking for a more measured approach
Hmm.
from our leaders.
Hmm.
And I like to say, I've been an attorney for 15 years. I've worked with people that, I disagree with. That's kind of the basis of litigation. But
Sure.
there's a way to solve problems and move things forward in a respectful way that I think we need to get back to.
Mm, I appreciate that. Brittany Bloam, thank you so much for being in conversation with me today. If people want to learn more about your campaign, where can they go?
So it's Brittany, Brittany, number 4, PA.com is the website. From there, you can find our socials. We actually have a very exciting campaign office opening this Saturday. You can find the information about that on the site, but we are sharing campaign space with the Shapiro Davis campaign.
Mhm.
And so the lieutenant governor will be here as well. So we're really looking forward to that. And if folks would like to come, they can sign up on the website.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you so much. Thanks to everybody who joined. I know there were like a ton of questions and comments on the feed here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to them, but Brittany, I really appreciate you sharing your platform and your thoughts on what could make Pennsylvania a place for the many and not just the privileged few to thrive. So thank you to everybody. And as always, please take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.